Good morning. I want to welcome you all to the 2013 Greensboro Day School Cum Laude Society Induction. I want to thank Mr. Walker and our musicians for bringing us in with such beautiful music. It's my pleasure to welcome our student body and our guests that are seated in the balcony to this year's Cum Laude Society Induction. And it's an equal pleasure to welcome Jesse Burris and Michael Jacobson to the stage to lead us in our national anthem. Please rise.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you. So, one of the draws for my family to the Greensboro Day School community was the fact that the Carolina League's Greensboro Grasshoppers play here. For years and years, my husband has been a huge fan of the Carolina League. And when he comes back from summer tours of small baseball fields across the Carolinas, the Asheville Tourists, the Winston-Salem Tides, the Grasshoppers, the Durham Bulls, he talks about the fact that each evening the game begins with a national anthem. And he's been troubled over the years by how we've forgotten as citizens how to sing the national anthem. Now, I would like to think that my husband is a true patriot and that this is one example of his national pride. But it's how he talks about our lack of capacity to sing the national anthem that makes me want to share this story with you today. He talks about the fact that if we've forgotten the words to the national anthem, then it means that we may be losing a common vocabulary. A vocabulary that allows us to talk about our similarities and our differences, our dreams and our aspirations. This morning, as we prepare to induct our newest members into the Cum Laude Society, I'm reminded that there's a vocabulary here that binds us together. Throughout the year, we spend time recognizing the achievements of various students and an array of talents within our day school community. And there's one word that holds each of these recognitions in common. And I'm going to propose that that word is discipline. According to researcher and writer, Stanford University professor Jim Collins, it's a culture of discipline that defines greatness. And Collins, as many of you know, who's written and researched around the habits of exceptional leadership for years, knows a lot about greatness. According to him, building a great enterprise begins with the people who are leading the organization. and that these highly effective people each have in common the habit of discipline, that they have the capacity to focus their energy, they have a commitment to service, and they see themselves as something bigger than the individual, that their participation is contributing to the greatness of the enterprise at hand. Today, as we prepare to induct our newest members into the Cum Laude Society, I want to take a moment to extend this vocabulary by recognizing the discipline that each of the students who will be inducted into the society have demonstrated. You know, it's not just their academic excellence that has distinguished them, but it's their discipline to seek out challenge. It's not just the honor of their character that we're recognizing, their ability to adhere to the GDS honor code, but their discipline to promote the habits of integrity, equity, and charity. It's not just that they do what's expected, but it's the discipline of expressing respect to others at all times. I hope that each of you appreciate the discipline that you bring to your work each day. Know how much each of us count on one another for that discipline. Look to nurture it, promote it in each other, and that you'll join me in appreciating the accomplishments of your classmates and peers this morning. It's my pleasure to begin this morning's induction with a recognition of current members of the Cum Laude Society. So I'd like to begin by introducing Elise Amundsen, who's going to share some thoughts about her membership within the society.
Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Tilley. To be successful in life, there are moments when it is necessary to give up your control and give that control over to others to handle. This past summer, I experienced a challenge that required me to rely on the control of someone else. I had the privilege of going to a father-daughter week with my dad at a camp called J.H. Ranch. This week was filled with many challenging outdoor adventures, but today I'm going to share with you one of my most difficult challenges, and that challenge took place in the form of a blindfolded trust walk. It started off as any normal trust walk, where I was blindfolded and my dad was leading me. But as we walked through the course, he took his hands off my shoulders and began leading me only by his voice. I need to take a moment, though, and say that I really do not like surprises, and I like to be able to see where I'm going. But my dad had earned my trust, so this all was fine. Soon, his directions started becoming more scarce, but I didn't think anything of it until I walked confidently into a tree. And besides the fact that it hurt a lot, I was also angry because my dad hadn't stopped me from hitting the tree. So I did as any independent person would do. I brushed myself off and I kept walking straight because that was the last direction that he'd given me. And I quickly walked full force into another tree. This happened 5 times before I became mad enough to ask him for directions. And when he began telling me where to go, it finally seemed like we were headed in the right direction. But where was the right direction? It suddenly hit me that I had no clue where I was headed, and that I had spent the entirety of the walk so focused on regaining my control that I hadn't even thought to ask where we were going. So I asked my dad, and he simply said that we were going to the bench. I asked him where this bench was, and he simply said to turn around and sit down, and I did, and there was a bench there. This meant that I'd been walking in circles around my destination, but had never thought to ask where he was leading me. So out of this experience, I learned 2 crucial things that I want you all here to take with you. First, I learned that while having control of a situation can be a great thing, there are times when others' directions and guidance are crucial in reaching a goal. I never could have found that bench on my own with a blindfold on, and sometimes life puts blindfolds on us, almost to ensure that we never forget the importance of relying on others. Secondly, ask others around you what the purpose is in your journey, because who knows? The only thing you may have to do is turn around and sit down to find your destination. And one more thing, please ask for help before and not after you too run full force into multiple trees. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Courtney Key. When I first discovered the Harry Potter series in the 2nd grade, I immediately fell in love with the character of Hermione Granger. I am sure you all know the character, the smart, encyclopedic girl who is known throughout Hogwarts as an overachiever. After finishing the first book, I wanted to echo and exhibit the qualities of Hermione. I became passionate about learning and excelling in my academic work. I would read any book I could get my hands on and would stay up late into the night reading. However, as I grew older, more Harry Potter books were published, and I matured along with Hermione. I realized that doing well in school is not the only thing that matters when looking at the grand scope of life. When Harry tells Hermione that she is better at spells than him in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, she replies, "Me, books and cleverness, there are more important things, like friendship and bravery." I understood that to become truly successful in life, I could not only rely on knowledge learned in the classroom. Like Hermione says, we need friendship, a support system for when things get rough, and bravery to conquer the unknown and make a name for ourselves in the world. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Harper Weisberg. We were out on an errand of some sort. I sat in the back seat, carefully strapped into my car seat, listening to my dad murmur, expletives to himself, out of frustration. Between that and the multiple U-turns that made me sway from one side to another, I still didn't catch on as to what was happening. My dad looked over his shoulder to explain, "We were lost." Confused, I responded, "Dad, how can you be lost? You're with me." In high school, I, like my classmates, continuously find myself feeling lost. Freshman year, the questions begin with, "How do I find my classes?" And slowly but surely, by senior year, you find yourself asking, "What college should I attend? What college can I even get into?" We get lost because we make wrong turns, whether choosing to study rather than sleep, or participating in an extracurricular at the expense of our academics. However, a wrong turn within the Greensboro Day School community never leads to a dead end. 4 years ago, in Mrs. Love's advanced algebra course, I thought I hit my academic dead end. I don't remember the topic or why it was so difficult for me to grasp at first, but I do remember that I failed. I failed big time. I performed poorly enough to warrant Mrs. Love calling my house on a Sunday afternoon. I was convinced that she'd say I didn't belong in the class, but to my surprise, she didn't. In an encouraging voice, she offered her help and support, as if to say, "Where should we go from here?" It wasn't a dead end after all. Academically, I've learned that we must define ourselves by our ability to return to the beaten path, whether paved by the help of faculty or our own personal efforts. Feeling lost is part of maturing as a student, because how are we as high school students expected to know what we want or what we need? Feeling lost is the universal permission given to us to find our passions. For me, that path lied beyond the GDS community, working on Jewish community development. Today, I dare you to look outside of not only what you know, but where you are. Only at Greensboro Day School am I okay feeling lost. High school academics are a riddle I've yet to crack, but that doesn't mean I've stopped trying. I'm okay feeling lost at GDS, because at the end of the day, I'm not alone. So to all the students before me, I ask, how can you feel lost? You're at GDS. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Gabrielle Merritt, and today I want to talk to you about training, learning, and endurance. Now, you may expect my speech to be about how to run faster, jump higher, and be at your top level in athletics and academics, which is very important. But what I want to talk to you about is how I use those skills that I have learned in the classroom and on the court to run 5 miles and pound down 12 Krispy Kreme donuts in just over 35 minutes. Now, you may be wondering how this skill will help you achieve your goals and reach your maximum potential, and I will try to tell you how. Initially, a friend of mine, half-jokingly, suggested that we participate in the Krispy Kreme challenge, and I said, why not? However, as the race came closer, I realized that I had not eaten one donut in years, much less 12 in one fleeting moment. So, I applied my analytical skills and figured out how the optimal way to go about this process. I knew my physical capabilities when it came to running, so step 1, sprint to the halfway mark, thus giving me more time to eat the dreaded dozen and make my way back. Then, in preparation of step 2, I did my research, going online to see what past participants had done for this race. With the help of my advisor, Ms. Savine, and a few friends, I consider the best method for me to be a squish, dunk, squeeze, and swallow technique. By stacking the donuts in groups of 4, I use my math skills to reduce the monster stack of 12 down to only 3 donuts. Next, with science in mind, I took the newly formed 3 donuts and dunked them in water and squeezed them. This not only condensed the donuts in size, but also helped to get rid of some of the excess glaze, all in an effort to reduce the time spent pounding down the 12 dreaded donuts. I was now ready to tackle feet and face the donuts. Step 3, make my way back while keeping all dozen down. Now you see, math, logic, science, strategy, and reason, all to try my best and win and not regurgitate. And it worked. To my actual surprise, I won, and now never, ever want to eat another donut again in my life. But more than this accolade, I realize that I have amassed the tools to achieve almost anything I want, beyond the classroom and in the real world. I know I have a lot more to learn, but I feel that Greensboro Day School has set me on the proper path for success in my future. And if you're attending the luncheon today, please enjoy the donuts served courtesy of me. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Smith. Throughout the past 17 years, I've learned an extraordinary amount simply from watching others. I've come to realize that the most important life lessons often don't come from textbooks, ingrained through multiple hours of studying and tedious work, yet instead are gleaned through observations that, once seen often enough, you hold to be true. Through all of the life lessons I have learned, 2 main values have stuck with me as the most important: responsibility and compassion. If you start something, you finish it. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. Extend grace, because you never know what someone else is going through. And don't judge other circumstances, because you haven't walked in their shoes. To this day, I know that responsibility and compassion are essential values, not because someone sat down and drilled lessons into my head, but instead from watching the most influential figure in my life, my mom. Through absolutely every action she did over the past 17 years, she showed me not only how important it is to be responsible for your actions, but to be compassionate to those around you. She worked extremely hard as a single parent to send me here to GDS to receive the best education possible. Now don't get me wrong, that lady has extremely high expectations, but I know it's only because she expects me to be responsible and do the best that I can do. And even now, as she's facing her 2nd cancer diagnosis, she has yet to stop and take even a minute to think about her predicament. Her selflessness and worrying more about those around her than herself has taught me the importance of compassion. I think the most important thing that I want everyone to walk away from today is to know that life will knock you down multiple times. It'll give you days where you just want to quit, give up, and walk away. But don't ever give up. And here at GDS, we're lucky enough to find people who we can count on. They will be compassionate, caring, and understanding, but will also hold you accountable. Make sure to take full advantage of the experiences that you have in life and learn from what others do. And remember to do your best to be responsible for your own actions and be compassionate to those around you, because you never know when you'll need them to be compassionate to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Shannon Ardell. One of my favorite classes that I've taken at GDS was Advanced Physics freshman year, even though it was probably the most challenging course I had taken up to that point. By the time I began AP Physics my senior year, I had forgotten much of what I had learned. However, there were a few things that really stuck with me, such as the concept of centrifugal force. Most people who hear the phrase centrifugal force think of the feeling of being pushed outwards when moving in a circular motion. For example, when you twirl a ball on a string in a circle, or when you feel pulled to the side while making a turn in your car. I was shocked when Mr. Register told us that the centrifugal force that we had always heard about actually wasn't a force at all. The force you feel is actually the force pushing you inwards, called the centripetal force. Now, the point of this speech is not to give you a physics lesson, but to caution you that everything is not always what it first appears to be. It is easy to make quick judgments about something, but oftentimes those conclusions are false. This not only applies to physics, but also to literature, art, people, or any situation in life. In literature, you may get the basic idea of a poem or story after the first time you read it, but usually a much closer reading is required to realize its true meaning. In art, simply a first glance at a sculpture or painting typically does not express to you the true significance of the piece. And for people, it's easy to judge someone based on your first impression of that person or what others have told you about him or her. But until you actually put yourself in their shoes, it's impossible to understand who they really are. Throughout my entire time at GDS, from science, English, and art classes, to building relationships with classmates and teachers, I have learned not to make rash judgments about things, but rather to look deeper and find what they truly are. Whether it's physics, poetry, a painting, or even a person or a situation, I encourage you to look at things from a new perspective, and you may discover something you never expected. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Jessup. It was 2 a.m. and I was wide awake. The pain in my side had become unbearable. I had a fever, that I was sure of. As I lay in my sweat-soaked spot, alone in a foreign country, I knew I was going to have to crawl from my bed, cobble together a childlike explanation in a foreign language, and to the Spanish mother I barely knew that I needed medical attention. There was no choice. I needed help. What I didn't realize was that help was going to come in the form of hospitals down dark alleyways, creepy attendants, and discussions about my health in a language I was just beginning to understand. As doctors rushed around, sticking needles in my arms and running various tests, I could only catch random words, such as appendicitis and surgery, which only elevated my level of terror. My parents were across the Atlantic and had no idea I was even in the hospital. 3 weeks in Spain to improve my fluency had seemed like such a good idea. From the beginning, I knew the risks I'd be taking. I'd be flying halfway across the world on my own, living in a house with 3 girls and a host mother, none of whom spoke English, and spending 3 weeks in a foreign country, away from my friends and family. But at that moment, as I lay there scared and alone, I began to wonder if this time I had traveled too far beyond my borders. I am someone who has always believed that you must take risks to create change. Not the crazy kind of risks that put your life in danger, but the kind where you push your limits beyond your comfort zone. Stepping outside of your familiar world helps you gain a better understanding of who you are and teaches you some of life's most valuable lessons. By participating only in activities and environments you are fully comfortable in, it is hard to reach your full potential. Sure, my overnight experience in a foreign hospital with an appendicitis scare wasn't exactly my idea of a fun summer vacation, but it taught me a lot about myself and what it means to be courageous, and how experiences such as this one can actually result in something great. My experience in Spain not only provided me with a great college essay, but it also taught me how to stand on my own 2 feet and helped me find an inner strength and a way to be brave and stay strong in even the hardest and scariest of times. So as you face the decisions of the coming year, the best advice I can give is to take the harder path and be willing to tackle the unknown. Be brave and take risks every once in a while. Don't be afraid to mess up. Playing it safe will only get you so far in life. Like Wayne Gretzky said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. In other words, you can't expect to achieve greatness if you aren't willing to try new things and tackle new experiences. Sure, not everything will go according to plan, but that's okay. Life is all about handling the curveballs thrown at you and making the most of every opportunity you're given. It's about having the courage to try something new. Let me be clear, I'm not advising you to spend the night in a foreign hospital, but I am recommending that you step outside your comfort zone, branch out and meet new people. Take a class you never thought you'd take. Pick an activity outside of school that interests you and run with it. Take on a leadership role, create something. Do what interests you and don't be afraid to mess up. In the words of an unknown author, take risks. If you win, you'll be happy. If you lose, you'll be wise. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Marissa Reed. I don't know if any of you remember this, but I tripped while getting on the stage last year. But Jennifer Lawrence did it too, and she won an Oscar, so I guess that's okay now. Still, I've decided to never wear heels to these things again. In that same vein, I want to share some other lessons I've learned with you. Since I came to GDS in 7th grade, I want to share 5 things I've learned over the past 5 years. First, Lenovo tablets are really cool. For about a month. Until they break. Second, you shouldn't eat in the theater, the library, or the commons, but you really shouldn't bring food into Dr. Bernhardt's room. That's the quickest way to lose a sandwich. Third, if you ever need to find Mr. Bowman, just look in every other teacher's room. He's around somewhere. Fourth, the Wesleyan fan section may be annoying, but the Wesleyan cheerleaders are the enemy. Finally, if you're ever having any trouble, inside school, outside school, whatever, go talk to someone. There are people at this school who can help. There are people at this school who want to help, and these same people want you to feel comfortable. They want you to succeed. But at the same time, don't be scared of failure. Okay, I said I would only say 5 things, but I've been at GDS almost 6 years now, so I think I can say 1 more. Don't avoid doing something just because you think you might fail. I mean, if I let being bad at things stop me, I wouldn't even be here right now. So pick a goal. I'm not saying it should be cum laude or anything, because you need to pick something that inspires you. Keep working towards that goal until you reach it. The path might not be direct or easy, but keep going anyway. And if you should happen to trip along the way, well, that's okay. You'll get there eventually. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Elise Amundsen. At Shakespeare camp, my director used to make us stand in a circle and tell each other, "If you fall, I will catch you," to support one another during auditions and performances. Not one of us could sincerely say this mantra without laughing, as we did not think it was necessary to expose ourselves and recognize the possibility of failure. But what if we were able to let go and embrace this discomfort? It was in the rain that I found myself catching others for the first time. I was hiking up a bald mountain at the Outdoor Academy in the most miserable of weather, a misty, freezing rain with heavy gusts of wind. The entire group was feeling dejected because we had been walking for miles in the rainstorm, looking for a campsite. The storm set in harder and burgled us of all our judgment, so we decided it was practical to drop our gear and set up camp on the top of a bald. This particular bald was adorned with giant boulders and lovely pieces of litter instead of trees. Obviously the perfect place to call home for the night. For some reason, the girls in the group decided it would be best not to set up our saturated tarp, but to sit on a giant rock. For hours, we marinated in the rain. The cold seeped into our bones, and finally it froze our minds. Suddenly, I found my group leader pushing me off the rock and yelling at me to set up the tarp, put on dry clothes, and get in my sleeping bag. My leader needed me to perform this task, as he'd recognized I was the only one who had not completely lost it yet. Through yelling and tears and thunder and rain and numb hands and wet eyelashes, I found myself sardined with 4 other shivering, crying, and soaking wet girls with a dripping tarp 6 inches over our heads. My resident then gave me the task to set my watch every hour and check in with everybody to make sure they were still alive and shivering. If they stopped shivering or responding, well, that would not mean the best for the situation. The girls had become hypothermic and were afraid to fall asleep and fear of freezing to death, as was I, but I couldn't let my fear get the best of me. When the first hour arrived, I received a moan from each person, the best sign of life they could give me. But the next time I looked at my watch, time had stopped. My watch was broken, and it only meant one thing for me. Tonight, I was not going to sleep. I had to keep my friends alive. And that is how I found myself warming 4 trembling souls with the story of my life. The stories flowed off my tongue, past my tears and past my own misery. And after 18 hours under the tarp, the story had kept us alive. I recently read my journal entry about the 18 hours under the tarp, and the last words in the journal were, "I'm so happy to be alive." I like to be uncomfortable. Maybe the reason I can say this is because I have learned that being uncomfortable will not last a lifetime. And if it does, you will get used to your current state of comfort. But in general, simple problems in life will get fixed. For example, if you get wet, you will dry off, believe it or not. If you fail a test, you will graduate high school. If you are lonely one day, you will make friends another day. However, to change your current state of discomfort, you can't just sit on a rock in the rain for too long and expect everything to be okay. Instead, learn to enjoy being uncomfortable and embrace the need to lean on other people and know that one day they will need to lean on you. What really is the backbone of this world are the beautiful people in it. So I encourage you to tell the person next to you that you will catch them. But first, I sincerely say to all of you, if you fall, I will catch you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Drew Wang. In 8th grade, I had one of the most important experiences of my time at GDS that forever changed the way I approached my education. No, I didn't win any award or have a brilliant breakthrough in one of my classes. It was quite the opposite, actually. I failed my first quiz. It was a Tuesday morning, November 20th, 2008, approximately 9:20 a.m. And I was in Mr. Blake's world history class taking a quiz I had studied hours for that previous night. It was a 5-question multiple choice KIA quiz, and despite my preparation, I was struggling to feel confident about any of my answers. With the time limit running out, I submitted the quiz and froze in disbelief when I saw I'd gotten a 2 out of 5, a 40%. At that point, I mentally checked out. I didn't even care what was being taught in class anymore, and made no attempt to hide my frustration and disappointment. I began complaining to my seatmates about how stupid the concept of a 5-question quiz was, and after several minutes of my ranting, Mr. Blake took notice. But rather than ignoring this annoying kid in the back of his room, causing disruption, he instead stopped teaching altogether, and gave the rest of the class assignment to work on, and called me out of the room. As I walked to the door, I expected to be talked to about my disrespectful and disruptive behavior. But when we got to the hallway, Mr. Blake didn't say a word about the quiz. He didn't say a word about my behavior. Instead, he asked me to take a walk with him. Truly confused, I agreed and followed him down to the fields, and we began walking around the track. After a lap of talking about nothing but the weather that morning, Mr. Blake finally asked me a simple question. "Drew," he said, "why are you here? Why do you go to school?" Initially, I had no idea how to respond, because I never really questioned it. My parents told me to go to school, so I went. Confused and lacking an answer, I said probably the most superficial reply I could think of. I said I went to school to get good grades. He laughed, probably seeing the irony in my answer, with me having just gotten a 40. But nonetheless, we continued and he told me to try again. "Why are you here?" he asked. I spent the next 20 minutes just trying to produce an answer, but every answer I said, as Mr. Blake pointed out, was just a mean to achieve something else. I attended school to please my parents. I studied and earned good grades to make my teachers and parents happy. I didn't list a single reason why I attended school for myself. As we headed back towards the middle school, he challenged me to find a genuine answer and to talk to him again when I did. Sure enough, a few days later, Mr. Blake and I met and walked around the track again, and this time I finally had an answer. After hours of thinking, I finally understood that I was at school to build a foundation that will enable me to do what I love in the future. I was at school to learn, not memorize, to understand, not look for answers that could be on a test. And ultimately, I was at school to improve who I am and move towards who I want to be. And with a grin, Mr. Blake nodded and said, "Better." He said ultimately everyone needs to find an answer to this question, and everyone's answer will be different, but told me to take my desire to succeed, invest it in the desire to learn, and trust that the grades would follow. So over the past 4 years, as I've lost my way on many English and history essays and stumbled over way more than my fair share of Miss Moore's math tests, I've always relied on this memory of this moment to put into perspective what's important and to remind me why I'm here. And as I stand on this stage today, a Cum Laude inductee, I can finally say, "You are right, Mr. Blake," and I can't thank you enough. So if you all get anything out of my speech today, I want you to remember 3 things. 1, failing a quiz or test is not the end of the world. 2, never forget that these teachers are all on your side. And 3, never forget why you're here. Thank you.
It's always so incredible to hear the voice of our students. They really exemplify the wonderful minds that they have, the teachers that they've had, and the exemplification of what we value so much at Greensboro Day School. Let's give them another round of applause. Well, a warm welcome to everyone. Thanks for being here with us today. A very special thanks to Mr. Walker and the orchestra. Thanks to Michael and Jesse for their rendition of the national anthem. I was just so moved by the stories that were told of trust, friendship, never being alone, the relationship of students to their parents, the real reason why we're here in school, the opportunities that are here for us, the success that comes from failure, stretching for goals, and the real work of school going beyond just grades and answers and quizzes. And I appreciate that our students brought to us much deeper thinking around this topic of why they're here and why they have been inducted into the Cum Laude Society. For over 100 years, the Cum Laude Society has recognized students like these who seek excellence, justice, and honor in their lives. And as we have heard and felt from our speakers, it includes challenging themselves, respecting others, honor, and the importance of warmth, good humor, a larger world view, and applying what they learn to real-life experiences. Before we induct the new members of our Cum Laude Society, I'd like to recognize the very important group of people without whom these students would not be able to excel. Please join me in thanking the upper school teachers who are on our stage today, and those in the audience, and those who inhabit our entire school for their incredible work with all of our students. I'd now like to invite to the stage the new inductees to our Cum Laude Society. New inductees, as you come up, please come up stage left. You will be welcomed up here and pinned. And then would you please exit stage right and stand down below the stage and wait there until everyone has been welcomed. Audience, please feel free to applaud for each student as they come up. Our 2013 Cum Laude inductees, our senior class, Caroline Clay Brassfield. Wynn McFarland Kuhlman. Caroline Elizabeth Melson. Andrew Philip Polotnikov. Alexandra Keener North. Christine Nicole South. And Clayton Allen Wilson. The juniors in the class of 2014, William Ryan Armstrong. Kevin Matthew Carter. Mary Hui Ying Glazer. Alexa Pearl Schlein. Rachel Jamie Scott. Caroline Blair Sherwood. Reed Walter Smith. Tyler Craig Sudburn. And Grayson Alexander Thompson. And one more senior, I apologize for skipping over her, Maggie West Phillips. I have another junior, Shivani Shaw. It's just because they're so special. We'd like to invite all of our Cum Laude members, new and old, to please remain in the theater down in front for picture taking. Family members are invited to luncheon in the Kaplan lobby. And we would like to ask our student body to please exit through the doors to your right. Thank you for celebrating this